Remember the general content, yes.
Very early August, correct?
To my knowledge.
And it was reviewed and uploaded within 24 hours by Apple, correct?
I don't know.
But you do know that the nature of the build and the hidden code was not disclosed to Apple, correct?
Correct.
And the day after it was approved, you sent a note to Microsoft, didn't you?
At the time, I remember I sent an email to Phil Spencer.
Let's take a look at that email, please. It is Exhibit DX4579. Very back to your binder.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sweeney, do you recognize Exhibit DX4579 to be an email from you to Mr. Spencer on August 5, 2020?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move Exhibit 4579 into evidence.
No objections. No objection, Your Honor. Admitted.
In the third paragraph of Exhibit 4579, you state that Epic has certain plans for August that will provide an extraordinary opportunity to highlight the value proposition of consoles and PCs in contrast to mobile platforms and to onboard new console users. That's a statement you made to Mr. Spencer on August 5, 2020, correct?
Yes.
You then go on to say, while I can't share details with any third party at this point, I give you Epic's assurance that our efforts will be positive and supportive of Microsoft Xbox, and Windows, correct?
Yes.
And you're referring here to the hotfix, aren't you?
Referring to Epic Point to Project Liberty.
Yeah. And you believe that it would make consoles and PCs appear to present a better value proposition to users in contrast to mobile platforms, correct?
Yes.
And you believe that would be an important thing for Mr. Spencer to know, correct?
Yes.
That he would be pleased with that?
I think I was presenting it as an opportunity to Microsoft.
And you also talk about it providing him the opportunity to onboard new console users, correct?
Yes.
And then 2 days later, you kind of reminded Mr. Spencer about what was about to happen, didn't you?
Not sure.
Let's take a look, please, at Exhibit 3478. No? You need there, sir?
Yes.
And do you recognize this to be an email exchange between you and Mr. Spencer on August 6th and August 7th of 2020?
Yes.
And in an email on August 7th, you respond to Mr. Spencer's message and you say, totally understood. I gather there's a lot going on at Microsoft nowadays. You stated that, correct?
Yes.
And then you go on to say, anyway, you'll enjoy the upcoming fireworks show. And that's a reference to Project Liberty, isn't it?
Yes.
And the fireworks show happened on August 13th, 2020, correct?
Figuratively, yes.
Figuratively. That was when, figuratively, the flip was switched on the hotfix, correct?
No, literally.
That was literal. All right. The hotfix was implemented.
Yes.
And the direct pay function was put in place within Fortnite on iOS.
Yes.
And you notified Apple around 2 a.m. Pacific time on August 13th, correct?
Yes.
And we've already seen that document, haven't we?
Yes.
And that was the first time that Apple was ever told of Epic's plans, correct?
Yes.
After it had been implemented, right?
Yes. Well, I'm sorry. I believe the notification was roughly simultaneous with implementation.
Thank you. And after the hotfix was triggered, you launched a PR campaign, correct?
After the hotfix was triggered, Epic announced the Fortnite Mega Drop, price drop.
And you also announced the free Fortnite Cup, correct?
We did that after Apple had bought Fortnite from iOS.
Well, so after the hotfix was implemented, you initiated the free Fortnite Cup, correct?
Chronologically, that is true.
And you also launched a campaign around something that says hashtag free Fortnite, right?
Yes.
And you had your graphics folks put together some caricatures of related to Apple, correct?
Epic put together a short video film called 1980 Fortnite, campaigning Apple and its policies. 1980 Fortnite, satirizing Apple and its policies.
And that was posted on August 13th, correct?
Yes, after Apple bought Fortnite.
So on August 13th, the hotfix was triggered, the lawsuit was filed, the video was posted, correct?
All those things happened on that date.
Let's please take a look at Exhibit 3724.
Assuming no objection.
Yes,
3478 is admitted.
Please move. Excuse me.
DX, we have only one piece of an objection to DX 3478, Your Honor. It's to the bottom portion of the email. There's a couple of statements from Mr. Spencer. They would be hearsay if they're being used for a non-hearsay use, and there would be no objection.
So stipulated, Your Honor. And since I stammered there a little bit, Your Honor, I'll just formally move 3478 into evidence, please.
I thought that's what we were talking about.
I was trying to do. And Mr. Sweeney, do you have Exhibit 3724 in front of you?
Yes.
All right. And do you recognize this to be an article that you posted on your website on August 20, 2020?
Yes, Epic did.
And it's entitled Join the Battle and Play in the Free Fortnite Cup on August 23, correct?
Yes.
And if you look, please, on the second page of this, and by the way, this is another caricature of the artwork here that refers to Apple, correct?
Yes.
And if you look at the first full paragraph on the second page, you state that if you're left behind on iOS after the Chapter 2 Season 4 launch, the party continues on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PC, Mac, GeForce Now, and through both the Epic Games app and the Samsung Galaxy Store, correct?
Yes.
And you're inviting people or suggesting to people who played on iOS devices that they could move over to any one of these other platforms to continue to play Fortnite and to pay for in-app purchases, correct?
With respect to the first part, yes. Just making a reference to in-app purchases.
Well, so certainly players could make in-app purchases on each of those platforms, correct?
Yes.
And if you turn, please, to page 6, and you state, do you only play Fortnite on mobile and are worried about not being able to play Chapter 2, Season 4? Here's a couple things you can do. And then you provide step-by-step instructions on how people can play on other devices than their iOS device, correct? And you state in paragraph 2 that iOS players should check this list of alternative Fortnite-compatible devices. You may already have access to another way to play Fortnite. If so, simply install the game and log in with your Epic account to get up and running. Correct?
Yes.
And you were telling them that because you knew that that was relevant to a lot of Epic game players, correct?
I think we're just helping our customers find a way to continue playing.
And Mr. Fellini, in December 2020, Epic began to sell V-Bucks on its own website. True?
I don't remember the date, but I know we do know.
And that's been going on for the last several months, whether December 2020 or some other starting date, correct?
Yes.
That was not going on as of August 13th, 2020. True?
That's right.
iOS players never had the option of purchasing V-Bucks directly from the Epic website, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So currently, though, anyone with access to a web browser can buy V-Bucks from the Epic website, right?
Yes.
And we talked about friction of transactions and things, but if you go in and you buy V-Bucks on the Epic website and put them in your V-Buck account, you then have cash on hand, if you will, when you go in and play your next game, correct?
Yes, with the exception of PlayStation and Nintendo Switch.
Because they still won't let V-Bucks purchased even from your website onto their platforms, correct?
Correct.
Now today, an iPhone user can use the Safari browser on their iPhone to go in and buy V-Bucks, correct?
Yes.
And those V-Bucks will be waiting for them when those players go onto their Xbox to play Fortnite, correct?
Yes.
And Apple doesn't earn any commission on those transactions, right?
Correct.
Because they take place outside of the App Store, correct?
Yes.
So if Fortnite were still on the iPhone, those players would have the option of making those very same transactions to purchase those very same V-Bucks to recharge their very same Fortnite account, but then play it on their phone, correct?
Yes, we'd have that capability.
Before you leave this topic, Mr. Doran, why wasn't that an option before August of last year?
No, it wasn't a very attractive option to our customers to.
Did you have the technological ability to do it, or you hadn't programmed that yet?
Yes, we simply hadn't programmed it.
But it was an option for you. You just chose not to do it?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Ron. And when Epic sells V-Bucks from its own website, it does not pay a commission to anyone, does it?
That's right.
And nonetheless, Epic sells V-Bucks on its website for the same price that it charges across all other platforms on which Fortnite is currently played and on which people can currently buy V-Bucks, correct?
Yes.
All right, two documents, DX 3774 and 3724.
Hey, move them both into evidence, Your Honor.
Any no objection, Ms. Ford?
Well, let me just, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
74.
74. We have, there's one word that I want to talk to Mr. Doran about, just literally one word that before it goes up in the box, I'd like to ask if he and I could agree that it gets blacked out. We have no objection to the document otherwise being received into evidence.
No, I have to handle this the same way as the other document. Admit it now, we'll confer, and the court can decide.
That's fine. 3774 is admitted with that reservation. 3724?
No objection, Your Honor.
That's admitted.
And the same issue with the 3774, that it won't go up into the box until it's converted. Thank you.
Okay. And again, I need to know my lunch.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Sweeney, you use an iPhone, correct?
Yes.
People have given you, particularly I would think a person in your position, people have given you Android devices, correct?
Yes.
And you've given those away, right?
Uh-huh.
You prefer the iPhone.
Yes.
You love the aesthetics of the hardware, true?
Yes.
You like the operating system, correct?
Many aspects of the operating system.
And you believe that the iPhone is a premium product, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that user privacy and security are fundamental competitive differentiators for Apple, correct?
Yes.
And you personally prefer to use iPhone because Apple's approach to maintaining your privacy, Mr. Sweeney, is superior to Google's, correct?
And that's among the reasons.
And among the reasons that you use an iPhone is because Apple's approach to customer data security is superior to Google's as well, correct?
Yes.
When I say Google, you understand I'm referring generally to Android devices, correct?
Yes.
And you value those qualities, the safeguarding of your privacy and your data, true?
Yes.
And if Apple were to compromise those fundamental differentiators, it would lose a significant competitive advantage over Android devices, wouldn't it?
I need to know about the specific changes it would make to judge whether they would make the platform more or less competitive.
Thank you, I'll pass the witness.
Okay. Correct. We'll go, Ms. Forrest, for another 8 minutes before our break.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Sweeney.
Good morning.
Mr. Sweeney, you had mentioned yesterday that you founded Epic in 1991, or the predecessor company to Epic?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the name of the entity that Epic became today?
It's now Epic Games Incorporated.
Okay. And what is the entity that is sued Apple today?
Epic Games Incorporated.
Does Epic Games Incorporated have any relationship to the Unreal Engine?
Yes.
What is that relationship?
We're the games developed the Unreal Engine.
And does the entity that sued Apple have any financial interest in the entity that owns the Unreal Engine?
Yes, it's all 100% owned.
And is the Unreal Engine distributed on iOS?
Facets of the Unreal Engine are distributed on iOS.
And for how long have facets of the Unreal Engine been distributed on iOS?
I believe for at least 2 years.
And are facets of the Unreal Engine currently distributed on iOS?
Yes.
Is there competitive gameplay in the facets of the Unreal Engine? Let's talk about House Party. Does the entity that sued Apple here today own a company that owns House Party?
Yes.
And does the entity that sued Epic in this lawsuit have a financial interest in the subsidiary that owns House Party?
You mean sued Apple?
I'm sorry, that's wrong, Your Honor. Thank you. Does the entity that sued Apple have an interest in the subsidiary of Epic that owns House Party?
Yes.
Is House Party distributed on iOS?
Yes.
Does House Party involve in competitive gameplay?
House Party includes some casual social games as part of the experience, but primarily a video chat app.
And how long has House Party been distributed on iOS?
My understanding is 4 years.
All right. Mr. Doran asked you some questions about revenue split yesterday. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And there were questions about a publisher split of 60-40. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Can you describe to the court the difference between what a publisher revenue split means versus a distributor revenue split?
Certainly, publisher is a full-service entity that provides often development funding, funds the marketing of a game, manages the marketing of the game, and covers all of the costs of manufacturing and distribution. Whereas a distributor is generally a company that only facilitates distribution, meaning getting the physical product or visual product from the seller to the buyer.
And how does the cost structure of being a publisher relate, if at all, to the commission structure that a publisher, that Epic as a publisher has previously entered into?
Publishers generally bear the majority of the cost of all creation and distribution of a piece of software. So a publisher will have a significantly higher cost structure than a distributor. And the publisher royalty rate pays the developers, and the distributor commissions generally reflect that.
And specifically with respect to the companies that Epic has published games with reference to and that Mr. Doran talked about yesterday with the 60-40 split, what services did Epic provide?
Epic, in many cases, provided funding for the development of the product. Epic created the marketing materials. Epic often ran advertisements. Epic covered and actually manufactured floppy disks and packages to send to customers. And Epic worked with distributors, third-party companies that helped to facilitate distribution of the software to users.
And are those services that Epic provided as publisher the same or different from the services that Epic provides in the Epic Game Store as distributor?
No, the services of Epic Game Store as a digital distributor are entirely different than the services Epic provides and has provided to developers as a publisher.
Yesterday you were asked about the Epic's interest, strike that. Mr. Doran asked you some questions about the rate of commissions that the console makers charge Epic. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know what rate Microsoft charges any other company that distributes, for which it distributes games?
No, Epic is generally not privy to terms of Microsoft deals with companies other than Epic and our subsidiaries.
Do you know whether or not Microsoft charges any companies less than 30%?
No.
Do you know what rate of commission Nintendo charges any company other than Epic for the distribution of its apps?
No, Epic isn't privy to third-party Nintendo deals.
Do you know whether or not Nintendo charges any company less than 30%?
I don't know.
Do you know the terms of any commissions that Sony charges any other company other than Epic?
No, except for Epic subsidiaries.
Do you, putting aside any Epic entity, do you know the terms of any Sony commission structure with regard to third-party companies?
No.
Do you know whether or not Sony charges any company other than Epic or its subsidiaries less than 30%?
I don't know.
You discussed earlier that Apple does not negotiate the terms of its agreements. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do the console makers negotiate terms of their agreements with Epic?
Yes.
Can you describe, let's just take Microsoft as an example. Describe generally the process by which some of that back and forth may occur.
There will be significant negotiations around a wide range of topics ranging from Microsoft marketing support of our product um, to technical issues and policy waivers.
And do those terms and conditions as a whole impact in any way the various terms of the commission structure?
Foundation.
You can answer with respect to EPIC.
With regard to EPIC.
Yeah, some of the terms EPIC is negotiated at different times. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Do the negotiations that EPIC has with the console makers as a whole impact the commission structure that EPIC enters into with those console makers?
No, EPIC has not negotiated commission structures, has never negotiated different commission structure with the console makers, to my knowledge.
Let me sort of ask the question differently. Does EPIC negotiate a variety of terms and conditions with the console makers?
Yes.
And does EPIC look at its agreements holistically with the console makers?
Yes.
Does EPIC's holistic review of those agreements impact all of its decisions on the terms and conditions that will be acceptable to it?
Yes.
Is that true with regard to Microsoft?
Yes.
Is that true with regard to Nintendo?
Yes.
Is that true with regard to Sony?
Yes.
That sounds like a good breaking point.
All right.
Let's have a recess for 20 minutes. Here at 10:35. We are back on record. That was a request that Mr. Sweeney is on the stand. We are back on record. Begin your reading. Mr. Sweeney is on the
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sweeney, you were asking questions yesterday about side-loading apps onto consoles. Do you recall those questions yesterday about side-loading Are you familiar with the phrase, is a console a general-purpose device?
No.
How would you describe a console as distinct, if it is, from a general-purpose device? How would you describe a
console? It's a fixed-function device that's used primarily in conjunction with a television for gaming and other television-based entertainment experiences.
And does the fact that a console is a general-purpose device have any implications insofar as you think about side-loading onto a console?
Yes.
Could you please describe that for the court?
Generally, with a fixed-function device, the user doesn't expect the ability to plug in a keyboard or program it or install software from other sources, whether it's a console or a thermostat or some other single-purpose device.
All right. If a banking app were loaded onto a console, could the console then be utilized in somebody's doctor's office if they went for a doctor's appointment with that banking app?
I don't understand that question.
Strike that question. It was poorly formed, Your Honor. I apologize. Are you familiar with apps that relate to banking functionality?
Yes.
Is a console what you would consider to be a portable device?
No.
If there was a banking app on a console, and would you be able to utilize it in your doctor's office to access the banking functionality?
No.
I still don't understand. You mean as opposed to going to the website where on...
Well, the distinction...
Because, right, we can access our bank accounts on our computers. We can access them on our mobile devices. So that's the point.
The point, Your Honor, is that the console is not a substitutable device in the doctor's office for utilizing functionality from many types of apps. Our contention in this case is that all apps are at issue, including the distribution of all apps is at issue, not just a game app, and therefore that the distinction is relevant.
Okay, you can answer the question. I mean, I can still access my bank account on both devices, so I really don't understand the point, but answer the question.
All right. Mr. Sweeney?
Well, you can't bring a console with you in a mobile situation, and the console doesn't include a keyboard as a standard feature, and so it would be very hard or impossible to use it as a general computer.
You've got a couple of consoles that were introduced into evidence yesterday, and they are, I think, right near you and on the stand. Do you see them?
Yes.
And do you recall what their names are?
Yes, it's a PlayStation 5, an Xbox Series X, and a Nintendo Switch.
All right. If the PlayStation, do you have a PlayStation in your own home?
Not currently.
Do you have a PlayStation at your office?
Yes.
And is the PlayStation, does it need to be plugged into any kind of power source?
Yes.
Are there any kind of controllers that are utilized with a PlayStation?
Yes, the game controller is a joystick.
If you have you ever had occasion to use the PlayStation in your office?
Yes.
And have you had occasion to use it with a joystick in your office?
Yes.
If you walked out of your office with the joystick, would you be able to play the PlayStation in an office on another floor?
No.
Same thing with regard to an Xbox. Do you have an Xbox at the Epic offices?
Yes.
Have you ever had occasion to utilize the Xbox at the Epic offices?
Yes.
Are there any controller devices associated with the Xbox?
Yes, there's a game controller.
Is there a power source associated with the Xbox?
Yes, the Xbox must be plugged into the wall to function.
If you had the Xbox plugged into the wall in one place within the Epic offices and then went 2 floors down in the Epic offices, would you be able to use the controller to manipulate that Xbox?
No.
Why not?
You couldn't see the screen, and even when there's a wireless controller, it doesn't have that range.
I'd like to hand you, for demonstrative purposes, an iPhone or a device. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you identify the device and describe it generally for the court, please?
Yes, this is an iPhone. It's 5 or 6 inches in size. It has a touch screen, a camera, and is connected to a cellular network.
All right, and I'm going to now hand you one of the devices that we talked about yesterday, the switch. And I've handed you 2 things that were associated with the switch that you identified yesterday. Can you describe each to the court in turn? First, the one that has the colored pieces on either end. What is that?
This is the switch with the portable controller plugged into it. And the other item is a game controller that can be used when the switch is plugged into a television.
All right. Is there a way in which the colored portions of the switch hook into the game controller?
Yes, they detach and plug into the game controller.
Could you detach them and plug them in now?
You can see I'm not a switch player.
That's all right. Neither am I.
I'm fine. I presume I could.
All right. Let me ask, I think I can ask the question just with the 2 pieces separately. In a situation in which you are, for instance, sitting on, do you ever have occasion to sit on a subway train or any kind of commuter transportation?
Yes.
All right. And if in instances when you're sitting on a piece of commuter transportation, such as a train, have you ever had occasion to play a game on a mobile device?
Yes.
Have you had the ability to manipulate the mobile device with a touch screen?
Yes.
And how many devices does it require you to hold at one time?
Just one.
If you are on a train and you are manipulating the switch device, how many devices would you or could you end up having to control?
Well, on the train, you could use the switch with the portable controller attached to it to a single device if you had a Wi-Fi connection, which the switch requires.
And is there an instance in which if one wanted to use the game controller, one would have to have more than one device?
Yes, if you wanted to play with the full game controller, you would need to set the switch down on a surface and then hold the game controller.
So if you were going to use the game controller with the switch, you'd have to be holding 2 devices. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I thought the switch was all one unit that you could, right, so you don't.
Yes, you can use the switch just in this mode by itself as a single device.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you show the court the second device that is used as a game controller?
Well, I understand, but that's just additional functionality. I thought that was part of the point of the switch, is that it was pretty portable.
Using a controller that cannot be done with the button. Are there any things that can be done with a controller that cannot be done with the controller provide any additional ability to manipulate any of the gameplay within the switch?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, you were asked some questions yesterday about your speech at the DICE Summit in 2012. Do you recall that?
It may feel like yesterday, but that was this morning.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. You were asked some questions about the DICE Summit that you spoke at in 2012 this morning. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Today, at the time you sued Epic, it was August of 2012. Sorry. My goodness.
Just slow down.
At the time, Mr. Sweeney, that Epic sued Apple, that was 2020, is that correct?
Yes, August 13th, 2020.
Are there any differences that you are aware of in the industry that occurred between 2012 and the time that you sued Apple in 2020?
Yes.
Could you describe those for the court?
We've seen enormous growth in the entire industry. Mobile game development teams have grown from one or several individuals to, in many cases, hundreds of developers. And competition between different app makers has led to very sophisticated app economics and costs of creating apps, such that the economics that were in place in 2012 were very, very different in the economics that are in place now.
Would you today, if you were to give give a speech at DICE, would you give the same speech with the same words?
No.
Have you heard of the phrase open platform?
Yes.
And is there any difference between what cross-platform play is and an open platform?
Yes. An open platform is a platform where one is free to install software from any source of their choosing. And generally the user has control over the device. A closed platform is one where the user does not have that freedom. And even on a closed platform, it is still possible to have cross-platform play between different devices and different platforms, with players from each different walled garden connecting together. Connecting together into a shared experience.
Cross-platform play, strike that. Does the ability to engage in cross-platform play mean that a platform is an open platform?
No.
Does the ability to engage in cross-platform play mean that a platform has an open distribution model?
No.
There have been some questions about Google Stadia. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not Google Stadia is in existence today?
I'm not sure you want to know. I don't know what the answer to that question is, but if he has insider information about things in development, I don't know how he's supposed to answer that question. So can you phrase it?
I believe, Your Honor, it's been publicly, there's a public announcement. I don't want to say anything else. I don't believe that I'm seeking any confidential information.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Sweeney, are you aware one way or the other as to whether or not Google Stadia has been shut down?
My understanding is that after a public launch, Google Stadia has been very significantly scaled back.
All right, and you were shown exhibit DX3199. Can we bring that up on the stand, on the machine? Do you recall questions on this document?
Yes.
When you were, was this document reflecting an interview of you?
Yes.
All right. What platforms were you referring to, if any, at the bottom of the page where you said it proves that developers have the real power in the industry and that where developers go, customers will go with them?
Yes.
What platforms were you referring to?
I was referring to competition among PC stores. That gamers would switch PC stores to go wherever developers went with their game.
Was the topic of this interview involving iOS?
The topic of this question was not. I did not see anything in this interview pertaining to any mobile platform.
when the statement is made, it proved that developers have the real power in the industry. Do you believe that that statement is correct with regard to iOS?
No.
Why not?
Apple has complete control over what games and other apps can be distributed on iOS. And we use that to make arbitrary policies and decisions, since Apple has all of the power and control on iOS.
In your experience, can developers move away from iOS and bring their customers with them?
No.
There were some questions about Epic Games business. When did Epic Games Store first have plans to include non-games?
This is something we have been discussing since prior to the public launch of the Epic Games Store in 2018.
And you described yesterday that there was non-game functionality on Fortnite. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was there non-game functionality on Fortnite prior to August 2020 when this lawsuit was launched?
Yes.
When did the Party Royale first have non-game functionality?
Party Island had non-game functionality from the time that we introduced the mode and continued as we hold concerts within it. And I believe that was late 2019 or early 2020.
And when were concerts first launched within Fortnite? Approximately.
So I don't remember the date of the first concert. The first concert was with the musician Marshmallow. I believe that was late 2018 or early 2019.
And was that prior to the filing of the lawsuit?
Yes. Was
there competitive gameplay at the Marshmallow concert?
No. When the concert began, there was just a pure entertainment experience that you couldn't win or lose.
And you've also mentioned yesterday the creative game mode within Fortnite.
Yes.
All right. When was...
Can I ask on that? When someone is a Fortnite user and they go to one of these concerts, they're still in their kind of Fortnite persona, aren't they? I mean, it's not like we're going on Zoom and with friends and you see your friends and you go into a meeting room or something like that. People are there in their kind of game mode, aren't they?
Yes, people go into these concerts with their 3D avatar, a Marvel superhero or a giant banana, and they're participating in a virtual 3D space.
Right. And so it still seems to me like, well, let me ask this. Do you have any data that suggests that anybody goes to the concerts who aren't already just Fortnite players? Isn't it just one more aspect of the game?
Well, yeah, we've seen a significant influx of people into Fortnite when we hold concerts, and also a significant amount of lapsed players in Fortnite coming back for concerts. So,
but all in this kind of game situation, right? I mean, there's some movies about stuff like this, aren't there?
Yeah, well, Ready Player One is an example.
Because I'm not a gamer, that's the one that comes to mind. Or is it like that?
Yeah, all of this metaverse science fiction portrays a realistic 3D world in which participants have both social experiences, like sitting in a bar and talking, and also game experiences, going on chases and things.
But would that be, because I haven't seen any evidence yet presented in how this actually looks on your game platform, but would that movie kind of be the most readily accessible analogy to what is going on?
Yeah, so I think Ready Player One is a great movie example. There's also Snow Crash, the book, which kind of describes this emerging social entertainment medium that transcends gaming.
But again, the distinction is that they're going into these with their avatars, with their kind of in this gaming environment, And beyond doing competitions, then you provide other kind of experiences.
Yeah, all in the virtual 3D world. You can stand there and watch Netflix with your friends, and it's different than watching in front of a TV. Because you can talk to your friends, and you can emote and throw tomatoes at the screen, and so it's a very different experience than either a game or Netflix.
But you still are monetizing that, you said, by offering people the ability to buy things while they're sitting there watching movies virtually together.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
And the kinds of what are the kinds of things they can buy at a concert, for instance?
Well, we typically, around the time of the concert, will promote items associated with the musician, as well as, like the Travis Scott concert includes a skin or an outfit for Travis Scott, so the Marshmallow concert. We also have emotes that are relevant to the concert. There comes at a kind of concert door, some waving around going sticks, for example.
And are you, let me ask the question this way. Does an individual who has an avatar, do they have to engage in gameplay in order to attend a concert?
No.
Does an individual who appears in the app as an avatar, do they have to engage in competitive gameplay to watch a movie?
No.
Does an individual who appears as an avatar in the app have to engage in competitive play to create within creative mode?
You aren't making a distinction, though, in terms of competitive play. People play games all the time that aren't necessarily competitive, right? Or is everything? I don't understand. If you have your Switch, I don't playing Candy Crush or something like that. You play a game. It's not necessarily competitive against other people. You're just playing a game.
Yeah, and there's typically game mechanics like a score or progression of some sort. It isn't present in these concerts.
But you aren't making the distinction that somehow people have to be playing against someone else. Is everything that you sell people playing against each other?
And then within Fortnite Creative, this is just a tool for creating your own Fortnite island. There's nothing resembling a game mechanic at all. It's more like Barbie fashion designer, but for the Fortnite universe.
Right, and so it doesn't have to be competitive, it's just entertainment.
It's definitely entertainment.
In fact, how would you define a game?
I think the game involves some sort of win or loss or progression, whether it's an individual or a social group of competitors. With a game, you're trying to build up to some outcome that you achieve, as opposed to an open-ended experience like building a Fortnite Creative Island or writing a Microsoft Word document. There's no scorekeeping mechanic, and you're never done or you never win.
Keep going.
You were asking questions about metal. Do you recall that, Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Doran showed you a document in which you praised metal in 2018. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. When was metal first released, approximately, if you can recall?
My recollection is in the 2014 timeframe, but I'm not certain.
So a couple of years at least before 2018?
I think so.
Okay. Do you know whether or not Epic invested any resources in improving metal?
Yes, we work very closely with Apple as we're bringing up support for the Unreal Engine in metal, and we gave them feedback on improving their API, and they gave us feedback on improving our engine.
All right. And does the work that Epic did with regard to metal, along with Apple, is that limited to the benefit of Epic, or will it benefit others?
I think all of these efforts we did in partnership with Apple will benefit all developers.
Okay, and can we pull up DX3818, please, for a moment? DX3818. All right. In this document, Mr. Doran pointed you to language in the paragraph on the first page regarding competition across platforms. Do you see that?
Sorry, what sentence?
Right there, anywhere in there.
Yeah.
Okay, do you see that language that you were pointed to by Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Okay. Does it benefit Epic to have cross-platform competition?
Yes.
Why?
Because competition ensures that users can get the best value and the best products and companies have an opportunity to win on their merit.
Is there right now cross-platform competition with iOS?
No, Apple locks iOS users into their platform and prevents competition in a lot of areas, including schooling, prevents competition. I'm sorry, you can't purchase a game on the Epic Game Store and then go to iOS, and if the game is also available on iOS, you won't own the game on iOS. You'd have to buy it again through Apple's store. So there's no cross-platform competition in many product categories because Apple prohibits it.
You were asking questions about Apple's AR kit. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the term API?
Yes.
Is AR kit an API?
Yes.
Is that API available for native apps?
Yes.
AR kit is an API, one way or the other, as to whether or not AR kit is available through WebKit.
Yes, Apple does not make AR kit available through WebKit.
What is the significance of that?
It means that a web app cannot compete with a native app in augmented reality, and it can't generally even exist because Apple prohibits AR from being used within a web browser to the extent of my knowledge.
Does that mean that a web app does not have access to ARKit?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about the trajectory of Fortnite usage in 2020. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you were asked questions specifically with regard to the COVID period of time in 2020 and Fortnite usage. Do you recall that?
Yes.
At the beginning of 2020, what was the trajectory of Fortnite usage?
Fortnite was going strong in early 2020, and January is my recollection.
All right. Let's pull up DX3774 if we could. Do you recall being shown this document by Mr. Doran?
Yes.
All right. And if you turn, please, to the page that is 1, 2, 3 pages in, there's a page base numbered at the bottom that ends at 765. Do you see that page?
Yes.
There's mobile platform fees, an existential issue as Fortnite evolves. Do you see that?
Yes.
And did you see this page at the time that this presentation was shown to the Board of Directors on or about July 27th, 2020?
Yes.
And do you agree with the statement, mobile platform fees, an existential issue as Fortnite evolves?
Yes.
What's your understanding as to why mobile platform fees are an existential issue as Fortnite evolves?
Sure, these fees are an existential issue to the development of the metaverse in general. Fortnite is increasingly a creator-driven platform. Companies and individuals besides Epic are creating content within Fortnite that they're working to distribute to users. And even though, because we're early in the development of a creator-based Fortnite economy. The long-term evolution of Fortnite will be opening up Fortnite as a platform for creators to distribute their work to users. And Epic is trying to build a metaverse in which creators can make the majority of profit from their own games and other entertainment experiences within Fortnite, which means that besides Epic paying all its operating costs for Fortnite servers, the majority of the revenue from creators' experiences in Fortnite should go to the creators themselves. And with Apple taking 30% off of the top, it makes it very, very hard for Epic and creators to exist in the future world.
Let's pull up, if we could, DX4579, another document you were shown by Mr. Doran. And I'd like to turn you to the paragraph that one of the parts of the document that Mr. Doran showed you, which is in the third paragraph on this page. And there's a sentence that says, Epic has certain plans for August that will provide an extraordinary opportunity to highlight the value proposition of consoles and PCs in contrast to mobile platforms and to onboard new console users. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any expectation at the time that you sent this email, which was 5 August 2020, as to the level of onboarding of new users that might occur?
Given the data we had, our understanding is platform switching has been relatively modest, but we want to do everything we could to enable Fortnite players to find a new home.
Were you expecting significant or insignificant onboarding of new users?
Expecting modest onboarding of new users.
All right. You were asked some questions about buying V-Bucks through the Epic website. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And in your view, is buying V-Bucks through the Epic website an attractive option for consumers?
No.
Why not?
And people want to buy V-Bucks in Fortnite is when they see a cool new item in the Fortnite outfit shop. And at that point in time, they're in Fortnite on some platform. And to set Fortnite aside and pull out some device, go to a website, log in, and then make a transaction there is extremely inconvenient versus a few taps on the screen using an app purchase. So generally, we appreciate that there's a huge amount of payment processing and customer friction associated with showing a user of an app an item outside of that app.
And have you seen any data as to the numbers of purchasers who complete transactions in-app versus outside of the app?
No, I don't remember.
Okay. Can you remind...
I just have a follow-up on this to Mr. Schwinn. Do you know the numbers in terms of the ages of the individuals who use Fortnite?
We don't track customer age.
So do you have an understanding generally whether a majority of the people who use your product are young people?
No, we understand the majority of Fortnite players to be generally young adults. It's a teen-rated game, a 13 plus.
So there's a substantial or not a substantial number of children who are playing their games.
I don't know. We don't track user age as a matter of business practice.
Why is it so inconvenient that someone can't make what I would call, as a parent, an impulse purchase? That is, if I'm a parent and I say, here's your allowance, and they choose to put $10 V-Bucks in their account, and they can use it when they want, isn't that a responsible way to deal with a young client base? Why should we want them to have the ability to just, on impulse, buy something?
Well, Fortnite has, and most platforms have parental controls preventing children from making cash purchases. And so if a parent would buy a child V-Bucks, whether in Fortnite on iOS or on our website, then the child has permission to spend those V-Bucks, but not to use the parent's credit card.
Right, but isn't that what you seem to want here? I mean, people have the ability to have an account, right? You've got an account of V-Bucks or savings or whatever. What's really asking for is the ability to have impulse purchases.
Yes, yeah, customer convenience is a huge factor in this. Because people are much more likely to make a purchase if it's easy to make a purchase than if it's really hard.
For the delay.
All right, Mr. Sweeney, you were shown a document. Let's pull it up. 4477 by Mr. Doran, and also I talked to you about this yesterday, and you were pointed to various portions of the document. Let me ask you whether or not Epic is suing for damages in this case.
No.
And would Epic have accepted a deal from Apple prior to the launch of the hotfix that related to relief just for itself and its concerns about Apple's policies?
Yes, that's what Epic was asking for in this document. So Apple had granted us permission, and then we would have launched Fortnite direct payment with Apple's blessing.
Did Epic want a deal just for itself or for all developers?
I did not want a deal just for Epic. I expressed the hope that Apple would make these options available to all developers.
If Apple had told you that the deal would only be for you and no other developers, if Apple had told you that it would offer you a deal for you and no other developers, would you have accepted that deal?
Yes, I would have.
When did you first learn that the class action existed, if you can recall?
Referring to the consumer?
Consumer class action or the developer class action?
The recollection is a bit hazy, but I remember reading about the Supreme Court matter on, was it the developer class action in 2018, I believe?
And remind the court when you first distributed on iOS?
I believe that in March or April of 2018.
And remind the court when you first distributed any game or product on iOS.
Okay, 2010.
And did Apple require Epic to enter into a developer agreement at that time?
Yes.
And you discussed that briefly with Mr. Doran yesterday. Do you recall that?
Yes.
All right. Did Epic have any ability to negotiate the terms with Apple prior to entering into that agreement?
No, Apple's terms were non-negotiable.
If Epic had not agreed to all of the terms in that developer agreement, would Epic have been able to distribute on iOS?
No.
You also spoke briefly with Mr. Doran about communications with Apple prior to filing the lawsuit. Let me show you, if I can, a document. That is PX2374. Your Honor, may I approach? And I'll also hand one to Your Honor and the clerks.
You may.
Now, Mr. Sweeney, I don't expect that you've seen the top email, but I'm interested in the portion of this document, PX2374, that appears to have come from you?
Yes.
What is this document? The portion that comes from you.
This is an email I sent to Tim Cook at Apple, suggesting that Apple make iOS an open platform in 2015.
And why did you send this email to Mr. Cook at that time?
In terms of the Apple's business model had been building up for a period of several years, and Epic had tried to arrange conversations with Apple, I think even prior to this. I hadn't had a chance until I just sent them an email on the topic.
All right, let me show you another document which has been marked as PX. Your Honor,
Any objections? 374 is admitted. I'm assuming that's what you wanted, Ms. Ford.
it is, Ms. It is, Your Honor. Thank you. I'd also like to show the witness what's been marked for identification as PX2421. And Mr. Sweeney, if you could let me know when you've had an opportunity to review this document.
No, I've seen it.
Okay, and there's a portion of the document, well, why don't you describe what the document is to the court, please?
This is an email discussion between myself and Epic Vice President Mark Bain, where we were attempting to set up a meeting with Apple to discuss our concerns with iOS, in particular in this case with Mr. Jazviat. Is that Jazviat at Apple?
And why were you making that suggestion?
I think we're continuing to grow with Apple's business model. We were at this point preparing to launch Fortnite on iOS. I wanted to have an executive level discussion with Apple about the topic.
All right. Your Honor, I'd like to move PX2421 into evidence.
Any objection? Submitted.
Mr. Sweeney, lastly, you were asked some questions yesterday or this morning about the Epic's June 2020 renewal of its agreement with Apple. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was Epic able to negotiate the terms of that agreement with Apple?
No.
If Epic had not agreed to the renewal agreement, what would have occurred?
I believe our membership in Apple's developer program would have expired, and Epic would be able to on it to develop software for at least iOS devices.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions at this time.
Recross limited to the scope of the work.
Mr. Sweeney, regarding Metal, you're aware that an updated version of Metal was issued by Apple in 2017, correct?
I don't remember it specifically.
Okay, you know that API has continued to evolve and improve since it was first released in 2014, correct?
Yes.
Secondly, if you could please look at Exhibit 2374, which you were just shown. Do you have that?
Yes.
This is your email to Mr. Cook. Do you have that?
Yes.
And in the first paragraph, you state in the second sentence that the App Store has done much good for the industry. And did you mean that when you made that statement in June 2015?
Yes.
And looking at the last paragraph, you state that it would be extremely positive for Apple to take this approach. Well, let's back up and just read the paragraph. The paragraph starts, compliance review would keep iOS free of malware, while open distribution would combine the best aspects of the App Store with the best aspects of open platforms. It would be extremely positive for Apple to take this approach proactively before this topic is overly complicated by opposing political, regulatory, moral, and competitive forces. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
And so you understood that the way that the App Store was structured was in part impacted by competitive forces, correct?
My concern at this point in time was that it was not impacted by competitive forces.
So even though you stated that the topic may become overly complicated by opposing competitive forces, you did not in fact believe that the App Store was impacted by competitive forces by June 2015. Is that your testimony?
My concern at this point was that the iOS app distribution model was not subject to any competition whatsoever. That was my concern.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to focus on my question, please. You stated in your email to Mr. Cook that it would be extremely positive for Apple to take this approach before the topic is overly complicated by opposing competitive forces. And you're telling us that despite having made that statement in June 2015, your view was that there were no competitive forces impacting your App Store. That's your testimony here today.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Sweeney, for Fortnite, iOS is accounted for about 5.5% of total Fortnite revenue through 2020, correct? Since launch.
I'm not ready.
You know it's well below 10%, though, aren't you?
Yes.
Your Honor, I failed to move Exhibit 4036 into evidence previously, I believe, and I would like to do that now.
I have it as admitted. It's not, but it will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. And then secondarily, I have the...
Before we move on for 4036, I don't think it has been formally offered, Your Honor. The only thing that I had on that one was an objection to the top portion of the email as hearsay that was being offered for a non-hearsay use, and we had no objection. The top portion is from an outside third party, Your Honor. Mr. Phil Spencer.
Again, Your Honor, it's just a statement of Mr. Spencer's position in this document. Whether he's telling the truth or not, I will not guess, but this is a position he took with Mr. Slaney.
information that went into effect after a user subscribed.
Would you handle payment processing?
Sorry, can I actually add one thing to that? Of course. It also changes certain decisions around, for example, we recently moved the ability to play prior offline because it was only used by 0.5% of users. Offline, that 0.5% of users might really care about that feature. And so if users complain about that, we'll typically refund them because we're no longer offering the exact product that they subscribed to. But again, we can't do that if their subscription was made through Apple.
And again, why can't you?
Because Apple doesn't allow us to.
Would you handle payment processing and billing and refunds differently for those folks who subscribe in the app on iOS if you did?
Yeah.
How would you handle it?
We would give refunds the same way we do for our website purchases. I'll also note that on Android, we are able to issue refunds, and we do so there.
Okay, let's talk about payment processing on the web. Who processes customer purchases of subscriptions for Down Dog products when the user subscribes on the web?
The user has two options. They can enter their credit card information directly, in which case it's processed by Stripe. They can also use PayPal.
Okay, so, and on the web then, who collects the user's billing information?
In PayPal's case, it's completely within PayPal. In Stripe's case, the credit card number is entered onto our webpage, but is sent directly to Stripe. It never touches our servers.
And who maintains and controls that information?
Stripe and PayPal.
And who receives the payment in the first instance for web subscriptions?
Sorry, I don't think I understand the question.
Do the payments go to Stripe and PayPal, or do they come directly to Down Dog?
They go to Stripe and PayPal, and then those two companies do payouts to us.
Now, on the web, can you issue refunds?
Yes.
Can you cancel subscriptions?
Yes.
Can you provide direct customer service to your clients?
Yes.
Why can you do that on the web, but not on iOS?
There's no arbiter of what we're allowed to do on the open web platform.
How does that change the customer service experience on the web compared to iOS?
It allows us to provide a superior customer service experience on the web.
Let's talk about security for one moment. You mentioned this, but I just want to reiterate it. Do the subscribers' credit card numbers ever reach Down Dog servers?
No, they do not.
And is that important to Down Dog?
Yes.
Why?
That's obviously important information, which if it did live on our servers, we would have to obviously take many precautions to make sure that information is secure. I believe there are specific legal regulations around credit card information specifically, all of which is dodged by having that information goes directly to Stripe.
Have you ever had any type of security issue arising from web-based subscriptions?
We have had a few users claim that their credit card information has been stolen, meaning that like the person who put in their credit card information was committing fraud, but not as a result of anything on our part.
Let me answer that question. Have you had any type of security issue caused by the fact that the user subscribed on the web as opposed to in the app on iOS?
No, we have not.
Does Down Dog pay a fee in connection with the services that Stripe and PayPal provide?
Yes, we do.
And how much do you pay?
I believe it's 30 cents per transaction plus 2.9%. It's slightly higher for transactions made not in United States dollars.
Now, in your view, taking into account all the various factors, who provides a better payment processing service, Apple or Stripe?
Stripe.
And in your view, taking into account all the factors, who provides a better payment processing service, Apple or PayPal? Now, assuming that Apple and Stripe services cost exactly the same, would you prefer to use Apple's payment processing service or Stripe's?
Stripe.
Does Apple's in-app payment service provide anything of material value to you that you did not receive from Stripe?
It is perhaps slightly easier for users to go through the payment flow for in-app purchases versus having to look up their credit card number. But besides that, no.
I believe that justifies Apple's 30% fee compared to Stripe's 3% fee.
No.
In your experience, has Apple applied its App Store guidelines consistently and fairly?
No.
Have you ever offered free trials?
Yes.
What are free trials?
When a user creates their account, simply by providing their email address, they have free access to all of the apps for a set period of time before we ever try to collect their billing information.
Does Apple have policies regarding how free trials can be conducted in iOS?
Yes.
And what is your experience with those policies?
Most notably, last summer, we were rejected several times with the reviewers telling us that we had to implement our free trial using in-app purchases, which would require that the trial would auto charge them at the end of the free trial period.
And can you just explain what that means? What would be required for the use of in-app purchase such that the user would be auto charged at the end of the period?
So essentially, after the user signs up, before they could ever try out the app, substantially actually do a class, they would have to go through Apple's payment flow to subscribe the in-app purchases. Though they are not actually charged until the free trial is done, they can turn off the free trial before and avoid a charge. However, we can't provide a way for them to do that from within the app. Because it was only used
Non sospettarti più di tanto, ogni minuto mi dà l'istinto di cucire.
I get those goosebumps every time you come around.
have taken our tribute, our profits, our control. This power is ours and ours alone. We shall prevail.
Like a light, he slept through the
pricing of those subscriptions impact where you offer them? Based on that, if Apple increased its commission on the App Store by 20%,
Your Honor,
would Downlog leave the iOS ecosystem?
I think it's unlikely. I think it's more likely that we would increase the price on iOS. I think it's unlikely.
If Apple increased its annual developer fee to $200 instead of $99. Annual Downlog leave the iOS ecosystem instead of $99. And why not? Downlog leave the iOS ecosystem.
That fee is very small compared to our revenue.
And why not? And why isn't it sufficient for Downlog to only be offered on Android devices? Sufficient
Again, there's very little crossover between Android and iOS for any particular user. In our case specifically, we've grown almost entirely by word of mouth. We've done almost no marketing, which means users tell their friends and family about Down Dog. If half of their friends and family can't download Down Dog because they have an iOS device and not Android, then that actually amounts to basically halving our growth rate, which is something that compounds over time. So it substantially reduces the ability for us to grow. At some point, I looked at the top 40 health and fitness apps according to Apple's own top charts, and at the time, only 2 of those top 40 did not also have an Android app, which suggests that it's very hard to be a popular consumer app while only supporting one platform. It's very hard to be a popular consumer app.
As far as you know, had anyone at Down Dog, including yourself, had any communications of any kind with anyone at Epic Games? Had any communications of any kind? Have you been given any incentive to testify here today?
No.
By anyone? Have you been given any incentive to testify here today? Are you at all concerned about testifying publicly regarding your views as to Apple's policies?
Yes.
And why are you concerned?
In the past, Apple has openly told developers that they shouldn't go public with their complaints. I believe there was in the app review guidelines, it stated if you run to the press and trash us, it never helps.
That was in the guidelines?
That was in the guidelines.
Do you believe that you have ever experienced retaliation from Apple?
I'm not sure. Our most recent update was submitted roughly 1 week after Epic listed me as a witness, and that update was delayed for 33 days without any explanation from Apple as to the reason for the delay. We asked explicitly, we messaged them twice asking for the reason for the delay. In the past, we've never had an app be in review for more than a few days, so 33 days was definitely exceptional. We never got a response from Apple, though it finally was approved, again, without any explanation last Thursday.
It was approved last Thursday?
Correct.
When you were deposed in this matter, had it been approved?
It had not.
Did you testify about the fact that you just told this court during your deposition?
Yes, I did.
And then the app was approved on Thursday?
Correct.
That's the witness strong.
Looks like now is a good time to take our second recess of the day. What I'm going to ask, Mr. Simon, you are prohibited from talking to the lawyers on either side, from talking to the parties on either side, from talking frankly to anybody about anything to do with this case. Do you understand?
I do.
All right. With that admonishment to the witness, we'll stand in recess until 10:15.